Hey, everybody, welcome back to the channel that takes you deep inside the San Francisco 49ers. I am your host, Jack Hammer, and it is time to take a look at Purdy, in particular, the truth that everybody seems to be hiding from you. So let's get into it. This really came about as a result of a couple of questions that I received for a mailbag segment that I was doing for the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. If you guys don't check out that blog, get over there, 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. That is the Inside the 49ers blog there. And this is about, like I said, the truth they are hiding from you when it comes to Brock Purdy. And really, when it comes down to it, what I want to get into these questions is I'm answering these questions. I want to go over, I think, where they're coming from, because I think it's the questions are coming from a place based off of narratives that people have heard throughout the season. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to set the record straight. We're going to get into the truth with regards to Brock Purdy today. Before we do that, we have Lucas Pesci, member of the Toolboxes. Hi, Jack. Hey, Lucas, good to have you on board. Hey, everybody else, real quick, I apologize. I know I'm a little bit late getting on here on the live. Had a couple of things I need to look up before we got started. I want to make sure I had some numbers right for you. And then also we got Luke Walsh, another member of the Toolboxes. I can handle the truth. Well, and then he comes back and he says, I can't. Luke, can you or can't you? Come on now. And then Shmuel says, and the truth shall set you free. Absolutely. And then we got Nick Garfwood in the house. He's coming from over in jolly old England, I believe. He says, evening, Jack. Good to have you on board, Nick. Harold says, Hammer reported that Nick Bosa may want guaranteed money. Trade Bosa to the Browns since they give out guaranteed contracts. I'm going to say this real quick before we get into the Brock Purdy thing on Nick Bosa. One of the things that we've heard as you go through these kind of negotiations, what happens is there comes a point in time when negotiations start to get tough. And what happens when those negotiations get tough is one side starts to leak information. And I think what we've seen recently with like the article, the information that's come from Albert Breer recently, and some of the different things that have been pushed out by the media, national media, that is. I think what's happening here is the 49ers are feeding some information because now they're trying to get the fans against Nick Bosa, so that puts a little bit of pressure possibly on them. It seems to be something that they do quite often. So, let's get into it. Let's go through and let's get through. I'm going to read the question. I'll give you my answer. We'll talk a little bit about where it's coming from. The first one was from this guy's on the channel a lot. So hopefully Shane's around today. Shane Colamarino. He sent in a really nice question. He said, it's no secret the 49ers have gotten off to some slow starts. With Sam Darnold as the backup now, does that extend the leash of Brock Purdy if they start 3-3 to let them figure it out as before? And, my response to that is that I don't think Darnold's presence on this roster has anything to do with Brock Purdy's leash. Even if it was Jimmy Garoppolo or it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, this team is Brock Purdy's team. Kyle Shanahan's told you that throughout the offseason that he believes in Brock Purdy. And you can see that by the way that he called the games last year, especially a couple of games in after, I'd say probably, by the second half, like towards the end of the game against the first half there against Tampa, going for the touchdown instead of just taking the field goal. The following week up in Seattle, the way that they called that game, just when you go through the way that Kyle Shanahan was calling plays last year once Brock Purdy took over, you could tell that he was comfortable with what he was seeing, and you could tell that he was comfortable that that Brock Purdy was going to go with where he needs to go with the ball, and also I think he was comfortable that Purdy wasn't going to make a stupid decision and put it in harm's way. And you look at that, and I think it's carried over into this offseason and training camp. I think when you look at Brock Purdy, he has the potential. He is where the guy that the 49ers, I think, want to have be their quarterback in San Francisco for a very long time. And this has been a discussion during this offseason, right? Is Brock Purdy a franchise quarterback? And I think when you look at Brock Purdy, I think, and you listen to that discussion, is Brock Purdy a franchise quarterback? It all comes back to things that really don't matter a whole lot when it comes to wins and losses for quarterbacks or how they perform. It's things like his height, his arm strength, those types of things that, and he's not going to get taller. His arm could improve a little bit, but it's not going to get a whole lot better than where it is right now. And so I think when you look at Brock Purdy and you look at the possibility of him becoming a franchise quarterback, I think you need to look at more of the intangibles and more of what he brings to the table in terms of getting the ball out quick, being able to read the defense, get the ball to those guys that his playmakers, What happens when those playmakers aren't around? Well, we saw it to an extent last year when Deebo Samuel wasn't on the field. Remember, he didn't, when Brock Purdy was playing, he didn't have Deebo Samuel the entire time. Yeah, he got a break because he had Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. But beyond that, he was able to still make plays without one of the better playmakers on this roster. And then once Deebo Samuel came back, all they did was it elevated the game a little bit even further. You saw his performance in the postseason and how well he did there when he had all of those weapons around him. Now, having watched Purdy throughout training camp, throughout his preseason games, working with Deebo Samuel, working with Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle a little bit, even when he didn't have McCaffrey and Kittle out there, he was able to put up big numbers. And I think that's one of the things that people have tried to say, right? When you look at the people who have tried to give you false information, that's why I say the truth that they're trying to hide from you, is there's been people who have tried to push off Brock Purdy's success because he had Christian McCaffrey, because he has the ability to play with George Kittle. It's not about, for those folks, it's not about Brock Purdy. It's about who he has around him. And I think it's important to understand that those narratives, that narrative in particular, comes from the same people that create the narrative that we're going to talk about next. And these narratives all come from folks that are Trey Lance fans, who are content creators that are Trey Lance fans, who have put it upon themselves to want to go out and make sure that everybody felt like Brock Purdy wasn't the guy, because they wanted it to be Trey Lance. And now Trey Lance is in Dallas. He's not even with the 49ers anymore. And it's one of those things where you look at what you just decide that you don't like, not that you don't like the player, but that the player that you like needs the opportunity. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to downplay all the accomplishments of the other in an effort to pick him up. And so when you look at what Brock Purdy did last year, he played at a very high level, and we'll get into all the numbers behind that in a minute. But the other part of this, when I looked at this question, it's no secret the 49ers have gotten off to a slow start. Does that extend the leash because they have Sam Darnold behind him? Again, I don't think so, because I think that Purdy is the guy. My prediction for Brock Purdy here in 2023 is that if he comes out and he plays to the level that I think he's capable of, Brock Purdy is going to be the first 49ers quarterback since Jeff Garcia in 2002 to be named to the Pro Bowl. I think that Brock Purdy is a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback this season. If he stays healthy and plays at the level that I expect him to play, he will be in the Pro Bowl. So there's prediction number one when it comes to this season coming up in 2023 for the 49ers. Brock Purdy will be a Pro Bowler. It'll break a 21-year drought for 49ers quarterbacks. That's my belief in what Brock Purdy brings to the table. Again, that's part of the truth that they're hiding from you, is that nobody really wants to talk about this. They don't want to have this conversation. But the reality is Brock Purdy's performance last year was at such a high level that if he does that throughout the course of the entire regular season this year, he's at least going to be in the Pro Bowl, maybe even beyond that. And it's good to see that Harold agrees with me there. He says, "Agree, Jack." Thank you, Harold. Glad that you agree with me. And here's the other one too. K Dubsville, the opinion that Brock has already reached his ceiling is a wild take. Crazy to see some people say that. And again, it's not wild when you understand where it's coming from. It's coming that notion that Brock Purdy isn't going to get better, or that he's already reached the highest level that he's going to reach, was based on fans of Trey Lance who have large platforms who talk, and then somebody else that has a larger platform talking about it. And again, it's just about getting that information out. But you got to remember, they're Trey Lance fans. That's why Trey Lance is in their Twitter headers and all those types of things. So again, sometimes when you see these opinions and you see these conversations, you just need to remember where they're coming from. Now, the other one that I wanted to talk about today, and this is going to be a little bit longer, this was from Sasha Brady, and he says, my concern with the 49ers is that it feels like we're built to be in the lead or in close games. We're not built to chase games and score points quickly. The best teams can do both if they have to. Is my fear misplaced? That was the question that they asked. And again, this one, the answer is the fear misplaced? And my response to Sasha is this: Yes, absolutely. Your fear is misplaced. If you go through and you look at the 49ers in 2022, just this last season, they were able to push the ball down quickly. And when they need to, they're more than capable of doing that. The 49ers finished last season with 75 explosive plays. That means 75 plays that they ran last year gained at least 20 or more yards. 75 for the 49ers. That's the third most in the NFL. Only Kansas City with 83 and Philadelphia with 80 had more. So that shows you where the numbers are. And then you can go back and you can look at the games and you can see examples of where the 49ers offense was explosive at times when they needed to be, when they needed to score points quickly. They were able to do it quite often. The game I just mentioned a few minutes ago with regards to the Tampa Bay in the second half, right before halftime, instead of kicking a field goal, they get an explosive play for a touchdown. You go back to a game where they're trailing against the Raiders, they're down by 10 points. They were explosive in moving that ball up and down the field when they needed to. And again, I would also point out in 2021, Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers down in Los Angeles against the Rams, needing to score a touchdown at the end of the game to send that game into overtime. What did they do? They drove right down the field and got into the end zone. A long throw down the sidelines. But again, it's not even a long throw. It's only about a 28 yard throw down the right sideline to Deebo Samuel, which is then a catch and run, right? But I think where Sasha's coming from is because this is all part of the Brock Purdy narrative that has been spun over this offseason by the Trey Lance contingent. Now, eventually, one of the things that typically happens in these situations is they're not anti Brock Purdy. They're Trey Lance. They're not anti Brock Purdy. They just think Trey Lance is better. Well, you don't have to be anti Brock Purdy to let your Trey Lance fandom make you be wrong about your thoughts on another player. Now, you might think he's okay. That's fine. But the information that you're putting out there against Brock Purdy is colored by the player that you like. And when you look at it, again, the numbers speak for themselves. Last year, 75 plays of 20 yards or more for the 49ers compared to 83 for the Chiefs and 80 for the Eagles. Now, let's just take that number because I think this really has to do with more about Brock Purdy, though, than the 49ers offense, because the whole discussion that Brock Purdy doesn't push the ball down the field enough, right? He doesn't take enough deep shots. Brock Purdy's not a deep ball thrower. Okay, so let's stop there for a second. I want to just compare some numbers. And yeah, this is going to be a comparison between two players in terms of the numbers that they put up in 2022. I don't think there's anybody watching this show that would tell you or would say that Patrick Mahomes isn't the best quarterback in the NFL. However, when you stop and you take a look at the numbers that Brock Purdy put up last season and the numbers that Patrick Mahomes put up last season, they're pretty interesting. Now, I don't think Brock Purdy yet is Patrick Mahomes. I think he has some abilities similar to him, but he's not. I don't think he'll ever be Patrick Mahomes, but he can be close. So let's take a look at some numbers. And this is going to be on attempts of throws beyond 20 yards last season. Brock Purdy, in his dropbacks last year, he threw the ball beyond 20 yards 11.6% of the time. So 11.6% of his dropbacks last year, he went beyond 20 yards. For Patrick Mahomes, that number was 9.4%. So about 2% lower. Not too much. Just a couple of throws difference, really, between the two. But again, and then the other thing is when this was brought up originally, the response was about how Brock Purdy faced a lot more single high safeties. Trey Lance, or not Trey Lance, but Patrick Mahomes was facing two high safeties at such a high rate that's what was forcing him to drop the ball and work the ball underneath. Well, later on, about a couple of weeks ago, Warren Sharp, who puts out some really good statistical data, pointed out the percentage of times that quarterbacks in the NFL faced two high safeties. And what do you know? Patrick Mahomes last year in 2022 faced two high safety defensive coverages at the exact same percentage as not Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo. No reason that Brock Purdy wasn't included is because he didn't have as many attempts as Garoppolo, so he was just under the qualifier. But again, Jimmy Garoppolo and Patrick Mahomes last season faced two high safeties at the same rate. Yeah. When you look at the completion percentage between Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy's completion percentage on throws beyond 20 yards last season, 40.7. For Patrick Mahomes, 44.3. So that seems like a big deal, right? Here's the thing, though. For Brock Purdy last season to get to 44.3%, to have his percentage of throws beyond 20 yards to match the same number as Patrick Mahomes last year, Brock Purdy would have needed to complete not 11, but 12. If he had finished 12 of 27 last year on throws beyond 20 yards, his completion percentage would have been just about a couple like, it would have been like 44.5, 44.6, just a little bit higher than Patrick Mahomes, but pretty much that same number. One. That's the difference in terms of the completion percentages between Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy on throws beyond 20 yards last season. Let's take that another step further, because one of the areas that last year that we know when it comes to the quarterbacks in the NFL, especially Brock Purdy, where he really excelled last season, was in that intermediate range, that 10 to 19 yard range. He was absolute money in that area last year. He threw into that area 19.3% of the time, 19.3% for Brock Purdy of his passes went to 10 to between 10 and 19 yards. That's the money, kind of the money area really in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, a little bit higher, 21%. Here's the difference between them. In that 10 to 19 yard depth range, Brock Purdy completed 80.4% of his passes. Patrick Mahomes, 61.8. Now, see what you want. I mean, I know that Travis Kelce is a hell of a receiver. There were some receivers that did some really nice things for Kansas City last year to help them out. 80.4 to 61.8, that's a big difference. Okay, now let's take this one more step further. I just think, again, this is all about Brock Purdy and his lack of going deep down the field or going down the field. So as you can see, based on the numbers, Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes had around the same percentage of throws beyond 10 yards. They're close at Brock Purdy had a bigger number in the 20 plus range. Patrick Mahomes a little bit about the same percentage different in that 10 to 19 yard range, right? So let's take a look at the numbers for Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes on throws that traveled at least 10 yards down the field. On throws that from 10 plus yards downfield last year, Brock Purdy's completions percentage was 65.8. 65.8 for Brock Purdy on throws that traveled more than 10 yards down the field last year. Patrick Mahomes in 2022 on throws that traveled at least 10 yards down the field in 2022, 56.4. A 9% difference in completion percentage between Purdy and Patrick Mahomes, with Brock Purdy having the bigger number. The other thing, we heard so much about this, not throwing the ball down the field last year. Well, let's look at one other number. Average depth of target. Now, the average depth of target, that all these numbers that I'm utilizing here are the regular season plus the postseason. Okay. And when you look at Brock Purdy's average depth of target last year, 7.8. Patrick Mahomes' average depth of target last year, 7.5. Now, is any of this to say that Brock Purdy is a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes? No, that's not the reason that I'm putting this out. But I'm putting this out because it's pushing back on the narrative, the false narratives about D&D, dinking and dunking, right? Didn't really want to go there, but you get it. Everybody should know that's what this discussion is about. Brock Purdy doesn't have the arm to go deep. Brock Purdy doesn't have this, doesn't have that. Well, when it comes to throwing the ball and pushing it down the field, Brock Purdy's pushing the ball down the field around the same rate as pretty much the best quarterback in the NFL. That's just the case. Yeah, he has a lot of talent around him. Brandon Ayuk is a really nice receiver. Deebo Samuel's a really nice receiver. Juwan Jennings is a nice third down receiver who helps the 49ers out in that area. George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the game. Christian McCaffrey, one of the best dual threat running backs in the NFL. All those things help them 100%. But the thing is, you still got to get the ball to these guys. You still have to be able to read the defense, and you still need to get to them. Dead or Head says, if Joe Montana thinks Purdy is good, I will trust the GOAT. And here's the other part with this really quick, and I'll just say this. I grew up watching Joe Montana, and I saw all of Steve Young's career with the 49ers. Like, I saw all these guys play. I saw pretty much their entire careers. Joe Montana, I missed his first season, and my first 80 is when I really started to understand kind of what was going on. Joe Montana was a guy who could throw the ball down the field, but Joe Montana was also a guy who took advantage of some really solid talent around him. Steve Young too. I mean, Jerry Rice, anybody? John Taylor, Dwight Clark, Freddie Solomon, Wendell Tyler. Wendell Tyler was a really good running back that they had picked up from the Rams. I mean, you just need to look up how good the teams were that Joe Montana played with and the amount of talent that he had around him. Steve Young played his entire career with Jerry Rice as a member of the 49ers. He went from Jerry Rice to Terrell Owens. At one time, he had both Rice and Terrell Owens together. He also had John Taylor and Jerry Rice for his entire career. I mean, you just look at the talent that Steve Young played with. You look at the talent that Joe Montana played with, and then you try to tell me that Brock Purdy is a product of only having the talent, and then you're going to argue how good these other guys were. There's a difference when you've been around the block a little bit and you've watched and you know what you're talking about. There's a difference. Blind Tom with the super chat. Blind Tom, thank you so much. He said this last night. Coaches knew from day one Trey was inaccurate, and they soon learned that Brock was an assassin. Blind Tom, I know you had a super chat yesterday that I think we missed, or you had a comment that you missed because you had put on a super chat last night that I didn't have a comment below it. We couldn't find it. I apologize. So hopefully this is what you said. Coaches knew from day one that Trey was inaccurate, and they soon learned that Brock was an assassin. And I think they learned pretty quickly that Brock Purdy was an interesting player. I don't think they realized that he was an assassin right away. It took them some time. I think they didn't really understand exactly what they had. I think they liked Brock Purdy, but they didn't realize that he was an assassin until he got into that game against the Miami Dolphins. And he went off, and you hear Kyle Shanahan talk about that, how after the game, they were bummed because of Garoppolo's injury. And he had gone home and he was a little bit worried about it, especially having to move forward with Purdy as the quarterback. And that night he's like, what am I doing? Basically he's like, what am I doing? I mean, did you see what this guy just went out and did? Like, let's see if we can get him to do that again. And sure enough, he just kept repeating it. That's the difference between having a guy that spent a lot of time in college and a guy that really hasn't played any football, right? Hasn't really played any football. That's the biggest problem with Trey Lance, is just that he didn't have time to develop. He came out too early. He needed another year, maybe two, at North Dakota State. Even that, who knows if Trey would have picked up the things that he's missing going from North Dakota State to the 49ers or to the NFL. Because if you look at the guys that have come out of North Dakota State, it hasn't really worked out. Carson Wentz had a really good stretch his second year and got injured. And after that, he's just bounced around the league and really hasn't done a whole lot of anything. The guy that's the backup quarterback now for the Chargers, he might be the most successful just because he's the backup quarterback. So who knows? I would like to believe that if Trey Lance had stayed in college a little bit longer, he would have gotten better, but I just don't know. I don't know, because of what they were asking him to do. I think when you look at Trey Lance, I just don't think that, it was a pro style offense. There were some similarities, but I think there might've been some things that just didn't really work out. I don't know. we'll see. We'll find out, right? He's in Dallas now. We'll see what happens with Trey Lance's career. But when it comes to Brock Purdy, I think it's just important to take a step back, and really understand the truth about how well he played last year. It's easy to go through the film and find misses. Trust me, I go through them and I find them. We've gone through it. We've talked about his misses on this channel, doing the film breakdown, different throws that he missed. The thing that I always point to when I look at quarterbacks on those film reviews, though, is when they miss a play, do they make up for it? And a lot of times last year, Brock Purdy, when he'd miss a throw, he'd come back and he'd make up for it. And he didn't have very many egregious misses that were just wide open, it was easy for a fan to see, where he's got a guy open and he just throws it over his head, right? That kind of thing. There's a discussion going on with regards to, if you look at, or is it Brock the same size as Jalen? I don't know where that's coming from. I know there was a discussion this offseason about it. Eric says Brock is also the same size as Jalen Hurts. There's a lot of similarities between the two in their size. Now let's just go look at it really quick. I know this is something that Larry had talked about before. Jalen Hurts, according to the stats, he's 6'1". What about Brock Purdy? Where does he measure up? I think Brock Purdy is right around that same thing. I'd say he's probably closer to 6 foot. They list him at 6'1". So about the same height there. I think sometimes a little bit, Jalen Hurts might be he might be an inch taller, but there's not much of a difference between the two. There really isn't. I think when you look at Brock Purdy on the field, I think one of the things that really kind of stands out about him is that I think when you look at Brock, he's very large on the lower half. His legs are huge. That's why they call him the quad father, kind of like Nick Bosa, same kind of thing, right? Nick Bosa is the quad father, and I think Brock Purdy would be the quad father junior kind of thing. Because if you see him in the shorts, he's got just massive quads, and that's one of the things that actually his throwing coach said was a little bit of a problem for him. But saying that he's 6 foot, 6'1", that's what they measure him at. I bet she's probably closer to 5'11", like CJ Gray says here, maybe 5'11". I think you might be right. I think there's, is an inch that much difference when it comes to height? I don't know. In terms of, the squats for Hurts, I know Hurts squats 600 pounds. Absolutely. I'd be interested to see what Brock Purdy can squat, because based on the build of his legs, I'd say he's pretty strong. That's one of the other things when it comes to Brock Purdy. He just doesn't there's not a lot of that kind of stuff out there. We didn't see any of Brock Purdy's workouts this year, did we? That's one of the other things when it comes to Brock Purdy. We didn't see any of his workouts. We didn't see anything with him. That's why when he showed up for that first day of training camp, everybody wanted to see what he looked like, because we hadn't seen him yet. Whereas, Trey Lance has been part of the social media. His team is very smart about getting him into the discussion. But we hadn't seen that with Brock Purdy. We did with Trey Lance. Colin Tracy, another super chat, says, do you think the Friars traded Lance to the Cowboys in hopes that their media would incite division among the fan base, similar to what happened here? I don't think so. I think that I know where you're going on this one, but I think the Friars traded Lance to the Cowboys because the Cowboys gave them the best offer. Let's be real. I don't think there was anybody who thought the Friars were going to get a 4th round pick for Trey Lance. The fact that they got a 4th round pick for him was surprising to pretty much everybody, and I think that's why he ended up with the Cowboys. Now, the other part of it, the division among the fan base, the media circus that comes with Trey Lance, and all those discussions, is that it definitely happens, right? I think when you look at around the 49ers, there's just been this division, this feeling that things aren't going good, that this has been a bad offseason for the 49ers, that there's just been so much negativity around the 49ers in this offseason. And I spoke a little bit about this last night with Larry, but I think really when you look at it, the negativity, the feeling that things aren't going right, it's all about Trey Lance. It's about the people who, it's all been about Trey Lance, all of that stuff. And I really can't wait until we can stop having it even be a topic of conversation. And it's not really so much here. But I think, again, there's a couple of things at play. One is Trey Lance, and the other is this. It goes back to what I've talked about a lot on this channel in the last couple of weeks, maybe more like a couple of days, is this whole, we need to hold accountable. We need to hold them accountable. Yeah. Holding people accountable doesn't mean you just talk shit about them constantly, put out shit tweets about people, put out, those kind of things. It just, that's not holding somebody accountable. Putting out false information, that's not accountable. Holding somebody accountable, putting out your own thoughts on the topic doesn't mean that you're holding anybody accountable. Right? And I'm not even talking about Trey Lance now. I'm talking about 49ers in general, talking about just the entire process of dealing with the 49ers and all the negativity that goes around. I just think that it's wild. Says Corporal Taz says, someone get screenshots, keep these receipts, and if we win the Super Bowl, remind all these quote Niner fans all the shit they talked while celebrating and posting "we did it" messages. Yeah, that's not going to change it, because the shit talkers are really smart in that they're shit talkers, but they're fans, and they always have they're always very quick to with how they pivot off of it. This whole this whole, when you get to like the negativity thing, the whole holding accountable thing, it's all just about being able to be negative, because negativity sells. It just does. Negativity sells. This channel, you can look it up by some of the videos that have been put out lately. The ones that have been negative around Nick Bosa put up big numbers. The ones that have been positive on Nick Bosa, not so much. So let's see what else we got. Luke Walsh says that he liked the AJ Jenkins pick. Luke, what's wrong with you? That was a bad one. That was a bad one from the get-go. When you look at that AJ Jenkins pick back from 20, whatever year that was, what was that? 2014, 2013. Yeah. The AJ Jenkins pick was a bad one. There was not really anything positive around him when you looked at his numbers. If you remember back in those days, Luke, back on the Press Democrat blog, I was quick to point out that that wasn't a good pick. Look at this guy. He wasn't even putting up good numbers against the Big Ten. And it transitioned over. Every once in a while, I get lucky. Every once in a while. A lot of times I'm wrong. Seldom, what is it Larry says? Often wrong, seldom in doubt, or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. And negativity equals clicks. Negativity sells. You're right. Missed it. Here it is. Nope. Gosh darn it. There's a good one. You guys are bringing them in here too quick. The Lewis family says, Jack, there's a rumor on Bosa contract closing. Any news? I haven't seen that. I know we're supposed to, from what I'm hearing, it's getting close. From everything that I've been hearing, they're getting close. Josina Anderson, I think it was, put out that she thinks it's going to get done this week. I think that's a possibility that it gets done this weekend. I think that it's going to get done in time for Monday. I really think that's the time that this is going to get done, is that it's going to be before Monday. Got to get him in so that you can get him in some practice. Because if he's not in before practice starts, he's not going to just show up and play in Pittsburgh. right? He's just not going to show up and play in Pittsburgh. See, Gav is a good dude. Gav is one of the toolbox members. He is the juice guy, and he knows what's up. He says, Jack, you was spot on about Jack Coletto. Laugh out loud. Hey, man, Gav, it's fine. You know, I know you were worried about it. I think all of us were. There was a lot of people that were worried about it. I will say that I was worried. That was a player that I wanted to see stay with the 49ers. I think for the future, keeping Jack Coletto in Santa Clara was going to be positive for the 49ers. And so that they waived him and were able to bring him back, that's a fantastic deal for the 49ers. And I got right. Every once in a while, you know what they say, right? A squirrel catches, even a blind squirrel gets a nut sometimes. So got it right on that one. I think when you look at the number for Nick Bosa right now, you have Aaron Donald. I think he's like just under 32 million. He's the highest paid average annual value defensive lineman in the league. Is his contract. So 32, it's not going to be 28. I think that 28 to 32 is the gap that people have been talking about. I think you're looking at more like 32 to 35 is where Nick Bosa is going to land. And I think that's why they haven't got it done so far. So, but there you have it. That's, I want to talk about Brock Purdy, wanted to talk again about what I think is the truth that people have been withholding, that people are hiding from you. Go through the numbers. Like I just mentioned, Brock Purdy, more attempts beyond 20 yards than Patrick Mahomes by a higher percentage, a little bit lower on that 10 to 19 yard, but you look at the 10 to 10 plus yard numbers for Purdy and Mahomes, and Purdy, 65.8% completion, Patrick Mahomes, 56.4%. Average depth of target last season for Brock Purdy, 7.8 to 7.5 for Patrick Mahomes. Is Brock Purdy Patrick Mahomes? Not yet. He probably never will be, but that doesn't mean that he can't get close to it. So, again, take it for what it's worth. Brock Purdy, I think he is going to be in the Pro Bowl this year. He is going to end the 49ers drought of having a quarterback get to the Pro Bowl. It's been since 2002. I think that ends in 2024 with Brock Purdy getting back to the Pro Bowl for the 49ers. So, again, take it for what it's worth. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you can do me a favor, hit that like button. Once you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. I see some names over on the side that I haven't noticed before. If you're checking this out and you're new and you're commenting, hit that subscribe button. On top of that, also make sure you turn on notifications. That way you don't miss any of the shows right here. I don't have a regular set schedule. I kind of come and go as much as I can. So, or when information hits. So make sure you have your notifications on so you don't miss any of the updates right here on Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer. Have a great rest of your day. Brock Purdy is going to be a Pro Bowler. Don't forget where you heard it first when it happens in February. Take care, everybody.